You open the refrigerator door. You lean in. You push past the milk, past the leftovers, and there it is, the bag of greens gone to slime, the half onion turned to glass, the berries wearing a gray fuzz coat. You bought all of it 4 days ago. Here is the claim I want you to sit with. A refrigerator does not keep your food fresh. It slows one kind of spoiling while it speeds up another. And the Amish kitchens I came to know keep butter, eggs, and vegetables good for weeks with no electricity at all, because they understood something about food that most of us were never taught. This is an old habit. It survived in plain houses precisely because those houses never plugged a cold box into the wall and stopped thinking. I am going to hand you the whole thing, right down to a butter trick written in a household book from 1832, a book a real woman published to keep families from going broke, and every piece of it works with what is already in your kitchen. A bowl, a jar, a little water, nothing you have to buy. I know how it sounds, because I was the worst offender there was. I once threw out a full drawer of carrots that had gone rubbery and soft, and I stood there at my own counter, garbage bag in hand, honestly believing that was just normal, that carrots did that. That food simply betrayed you on day 5 and there was nothing to be done. I was wrong about nearly everything, and it cost me for years. So let me start where my thinking finally cracked open, because the first thing I had to unlearn was the idea that cold is the hero of the story. It is not. Think about what actually happens inside that machine humming in your kitchen. It runs a fan. That fan moves dry, chilled air across every surface, over and over, all day and all night. Cold air holds almost no moisture. So what does it do to a leaf of lettuce, to a carrot, to a slice of bread left uncovered? It pulls the water straight out of them. That is why your greens go limp. That is why an unwrapped onion turns to a dry, papery shell. Your refrigerator is quietly drying your food like a slow wind on a winter day. Now picture where the Amish kept their food before the idea of an electric box ever reached them. Many families used a springhouse, a small stone building built right over a running spring, so the cold water flowed across the floor and around the crocks. I have stood in one on a hot afternoon and felt the temperature drop the second I stepped through the door. But here is the part that mattered. It was not just cold. It was cold and damp and still. The air did not move much, and it was full of moisture from the water. Food did not dry out in there. It rested. That is the whole secret in one sentence. It was never only about temperature. It was about temperature, moisture, and stillness, all working together. And once you understand that, you start to see why so much of what we do now actually makes food worse. We take a living vegetable, we seal it in a plastic bag so it cannot breathe, we blast it with dry, moving air, and then we act surprised when it rots in a slimy puddle. That slime is not the vegetable failing. That is the vegetable suffocating and drying at the same time, which is about the cruelest thing you can do to it. The Amish grandmother I learned the most from never owned a crisper drawer in her life, and her vegetables outlasted mine by a country mile. That gap, that plain, embarrassing gap between her kitchen and mine, is what finally made me shut up and pay attention. Because if the machine I trusted was part of the problem, then the food I had been throwing away every single week was never really spoiled beyond saving. It was just badly kept. So let me show you what she did instead, starting with the vegetables that used to die in my drawer. Root vegetables, carrots, beets, turnips, potatoes do not want your refrigerator at all. They came out of cool, damp, dark earth, and every instinct in them is looking for that again. So that is exactly what the old kitchens gave them back. You take a wooden box, or a bucket, or a deep crock. You put down a layer of slightly damp sand, or even damp sawdust. You lay your carrots or beets in so they are not touching each other, and you cover them with more sand, and you keep going in layers until the box is full. Then you set it somewhere cool and dark. A cellar step, an unheated back room, a closet against an outside wall. That is it. And carrots kept that way stay firm and sweet not for 1 week but for months. This is not a charming story I am telling you. The United States Department of Agriculture and University Extension offices have published storage charts for generations, and they will tell you that root crops held near 32 to 40 degrees with high humidity keep for 4, 5, even 6 months. The damp sand is simply how a family with no machine created that exact condition: cold, dark, humid, and still. The very same 4 things as the spring house. There was a detail she drilled into me that I want you to hear, because it is where most people ruin everything without knowing it. Do not wash your vegetables before you store them. I used to come home, rinse everything shiny under the tap, feel very clean and responsible about it, and pack it all away wet. I was starting the rot with my own hands. That thin layer of dirt from the garden is protection. The moment you scrub it off and add water and warmth, you have rung the dinner bell for every mold spore in the room. You wash it when you are about to eat it, never before, and potatoes and onions keep them apart. Onions give off a gas and a moisture that make potatoes sprout and go soft faster. In the old houses, onions hung in a braid in the dry air, and potatoes sat in the dark in their own basket, and the two were kept like quarreling cousins at opposite ends of the room. So already the picture is turning around. The problem was never that vegetables spoil fast. The problem is that we store them in the one place actively working against them, and then we blame the carrot. But right about here is where I can hear you pushing back. I can hear it because I said the same thing myself. You are thinking, that is fine for somebody with a stone cellar and a spring and a big farmhouse, but I live in an apartment. I have got a small kitchen, 1 closet, no basement, and a landlord. This is not for me. I need you to stay with me, because this next part is aimed straight at you, and it is the part almost nobody tells you. You do not need a cellar. You need cool, dark, damp, and still, and you can build all 4 inside a cardboard box. Here is what I did in a second-floor apartment with no basement at all. I took a plain cardboard box. I found the coolest spot I had, which was the floor of a closet on the shaded north side, against an outside wall, away from the heat of the oven and the sunny window. I put a couple of clean kitchen towels in the bottom, dampened but not dripping. I stood my carrots up in there like little logs, tucked a few beets around them, and laid another damp towel loosely over the top, not sealed, just resting, so the air stayed humid but could still move a little. My carrots stayed firm for over a month. In the drawer, they used to go rubbery in a week or 10 days. No sand? Use damp paper towels or newspaper wrapped around each root. No closet? The back corner of the lowest cabinet, the one farthest from the stove, works. Living somewhere cold in winter? An unheated hallway? An enclosed porch? Even between the panes of an old drafty window will hold near cellar temperature for months, free of charge? And your leafy greens? The ones that turn to slime and break your heart, treat them the opposite of how the bag wants you to. Do not seal them wet in plastic. Wrap them in a slightly damp cloth or a paper towel so they can breathe but stay moist. Then set them in a bowl or a loosely closed container. You are recreating that still, humid springhouse air on a shelf, and limp greens will crisp back up instead of drowning. Fresh herbs, parsley, cilantro, green onions, trim the ends and stand them in a glass with an inch of water, like flowers, right there on your counter. They will outlast the slimy bag by a week or more, and they look pretty while they do it. None of this needs a garden. None of it needs land. It needs a box, a towel, a glass of water, and the willingness to stop doing the one thing that was quietly killing your food. And that right there is the whole shape of the thing. A box, a towel, and a habit worth more than any appliance you could buy. I put every one of these habits down on paper myself, because a video only holds so much, and the written versions go deeper than my mouth can go in 20 minutes. Exact layering for the sandbox, the humidity ranges to aim for, how long each root actually holds, the sharpening system for the knife you use on all of it, The vinegar and baking soda and boiling water routine that keeps the whole kitchen honest, plus a household audit that shows you, in writing, where your money has been leaking out all year. It is the same plain method you are watching work, only measured, tested, and complete, with the failures and the fixes I learned the hard way, so you do not have to lose a drawer of carrots the way I did. If you want the full system, scan the QR code right there on your screen, or use the link in the description or the pinned comment for the books. Now, having said all that, there is something else you deserve to know. And it is not a technique. It is a question that ought to make your jaw tighten. So if the fix is this cheap, this old, and this simple, you have every right to be angry about the same question that finally lit a fire in me. Why did no one ever tell us? Here is where the story turns, and I will not soften it, because it took me too long to see it myself. Somewhere in the early 20th century, as the electric refrigerator moved into American homes, a message came with it, loud and constant. Cold equals safe. Cold equals modern. Everything else is dirty, backward, dangerous, the way your poor grandmother lived before she knew better. And there was real money riding on you believing that. Because a family that trusts a machine buys the machine, buys the electricity to run it, buys the replacement when it dies, and slowly forgets it ever kept food any other way. We did not just buy a cold box. We were sold a story that made every older method look like a health risk. And once you feel foolish for the old way, you stop asking questions and you start throwing away perfectly good food on a schedule. The clearest place you can see this is the humble egg. And what happened to the egg made me genuinely angry once I understood it. Walk into a grocery store almost anywhere in America and the eggs sit in a refrigerated case, and you are taught they must stay cold or they will make you sick. Now walk into a shop in much of Europe and the eggs sit right out on a shelf at room temperature and nobody there is falling ill from it. Both cannot be simple facts of nature. So what is the difference? The difference is a coating. When a hen lays an egg, she coats it in a thin, invisible, natural layer. The old country name for it is the bloom. Scientists call it the cuticle. That layer seals the thousands of tiny pores in the shell and locks bacteria out and moisture in. A freshly laid, unwashed egg with its bloom intact will sit on a cool counter and stay good to eat for 2, 3, even 4 weeks. No refrigeration at all. Farm families and Amish kitchens have known this forever. They gathered eggs, left the clean ones unwashed, set them in a bowl on the counter, and ate them for weeks. But the modern egg you buy has been power washed at the plant, and that washing strips the bloom clean off. Now you have an egg full of open pores and no protection, and that egg genuinely does have to stay cold, because we removed the very thing nature put there to keep it safe. We broke the egg's own defense, and then sold everyone a machine to make up for what we broke. Read that back slowly, because that is the whole trick in miniature. Take away the simple protection, call the result dangerous, sell the cure. And when I finally understood that, I could not stop wondering, what did families do to keep eggs even longer? Back before any of this, not 3 weeks. All the way through a winter, when the hens stopped laying, they had an answer for that too. And it is so simple it almost made me laugh out loud. They called it water glassing. Long before that name, the idea was ancient. You take fresh, unwashed eggs, bloom still on, and you lower them into a solution that seals them off completely from air. The old-timers used a substance called water glass, which is sodium silicate, or they used a lime solution made from pickling lime and water. The eggs go into a crock, the liquid covers them, and the whole thing sits in a cool corner. And the eggs keep for many months, through the whole dead of winter. University extension programs and modern homesteaders have tested this again and again, and eggs preserved this way have come out good at 8 months, 10 months, and beyond. Still fine for baking and cooking. I tried it myself, half expecting a crock of rotten disaster. Months later, I cracked one open, braced for the worst, and it was perfect. Clear, white, firm yolk. It cooked up like it was laid that morning. I stood there, feeling like I had been let in on a secret somebody had worked very hard to make me forget. So think about where we are now. Your vegetables can keep for months in a box of damp sand. Your eggs can keep for weeks on the counter and months in a crock. The machine was never the miracle. The knowledge was the miracle. And the machine just made us stop learning it. But there is one food I had truly given up on. One I was certain had to live in the cold or turn rancid within days. And the answer to that one is the oldest trick in the whole story, written down in a real book by a real woman almost 200 years ago, and it is the one I want you to be able to test before you go to bed tonight. That food is butter. I love butter. And for years I believed you had two choices. Keep it in the refrigerator, where it turns into a cold brick that tears your bread to shreds. Or leave it out on the counter, where within a couple of days it goes yellow at the edges, picks up an off smell, and turns rancid. Cold and useless, or soft and spoiled. I thought those were the only options there ever were. They were not. And the proof is sitting in a book called The American Frugal Housewife, written by Lydia Maria Child and published in 1832. She wrote it for families with very little money, and the whole point of the book was to waste nothing. It went through more than 30 printings because ordinary people clung to it. On its pages, and in the plain kitchens that lived by the same wisdom, is the way to keep butter fresh and soft and spreadable at room temperature for weeks with nothing but water. Here's the method. It is called a butter crock or a butter bell, and you can make one this minute from a jar and a bowl. You pack fresh butter firmly into a cup, a small jar, or a crock. Pack it tight so there are no air pockets hiding inside. Then you turn that cup upside down and lower it into a second container that holds about an inch of cool water. The mouth of the butter cup sits down in the water. The butter itself hangs above, sealed by nothing but that ring of water around the rim. And that little seal of water is everything. Butter goes rancid because the oxygen in the air reacts with the fat. The water forms a complete barrier. No air can reach the butter, so it simply cannot go rancid the way an open dish does. You change the water every couple of days to keep it fresh, and the butter stays soft, sweet, and spreadable on the counter for weeks. This is not folklore. It is plain physics. Cut off the oxygen. Stop the spoiling. Coastal families in France kept butter this exact way for generations, and thrifty American households like the ones Lydia Child wrote for did the same, because a refrigerator was not even a dream yet and butter was far too precious to throw away. The first time I did it, I used a coffee mug for the butter and a small cereal bowl for the water. That was the entire setup. Days later, my butter was still perfect, still soft enough to spread on toast without ripping a single hole in the bread, and I remember standing in my kitchen almost embarrassed at how long I had suffered cold, torn toast for absolutely no reason. Think about what you have been doing instead. Maybe you microwave the cold brick for 10 seconds and half of it melts to grease. Maybe you leave it out and toss the rancid part every week. Maybe you bought one of those fancy plastic butter keepers that promised the world and cracked in a month. I did all three. The answer had been sitting in a household manual since 1832, kept alive in plain kitchens that never stopped using it, waiting for somebody to simply tell you. Now you know. A cup, a bowl, an inch of water. You can build it tonight, and by breakfast you will already feel the difference. And once you have felt that, once you taste the soft butter and crack the good egg and pull a firm carrot out of a box in your own closet, something shifts in you that is bigger than any single trick, because you realize the same quiet lie was told about all of it, that the old way was dirty, that the simple way was dangerous, that you needed to buy your way to safety. And every time you prove that lie wrong with your own two hands at your own counter, you take back a little more of what was taken from you. That is the real thing I want you to walk away holding. Not just a butter crock or a box of sand. The plain, steadying fact that your grandmother and her grandmother were not backward or foolish. They were skilled. They knew how to keep food alive without a single machine, and that knowledge did not vanish because it stopped working. It got buried because a quiet, spreadable, months-long freshness was very hard to sell you. You are not the kind of person who throws food in the garbage because a label or a habit told you to. You never were. You are the kind who wants to know how a thing actually works, who would rather test it at the counter than take it on faith, who refuses to keep paying for the same lesson over and over again. That instinct is exactly right. It is the instinct these old kitchens were built on. So let me ask you one thing, and I truly want your answer. Of everything we walked through the damp sandbox for carrots, the unwashed eggs standing on the counter, the crock of water-glassed eggs keeping all winter, or the upside-down butter crock from 1832, which one are you going to test first in your own kitchen? Tell me in the comments. Just name the one. I read them, and I want to know which lost habit you are taking back tonight. And if any part of this made you angry that no one told you sooner, then you belong with the rest of us who are digging these habits back up, one plain trick at a time. Come along, so the next one finds you. Because there is another one. I am saving an old way to keep a loaf of bread soft and fresh for well over a week, using nothing but one common thing most people throw straight in the trash. I will show you exactly what it is and exactly how it works. Until then, go pack that butter, set it in its little ring of water, and sleep easy knowing you just took something back that was never supposed to be lost. Before you go, one thing. This video gave you the idea, but inside the Amish kitchen circle I hand you the full no electricity storage method, food by food, and if something puzzles you, ask me directly, a real person, me, answers. Never a machine. You won't be doing it alone. You belong here with cooks just like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on your screen. Cancel anytime with one click. Come join me. Now, if you love keeping food fresh the old way, wait until you see how the Amish keep onions firm and sweet for a whole year. No rotting, no sprouting. That video's starting right here.